The chamber was tense, with cameras rolling and every eye locked on the heated exchange. Jim Jordan leaned forward, voice rising, trying to corner Jasmine Crockett with a barrage of rapid-fire legal claims. He was confident, too confident, that she would stumble under the pressure. But Crockett didn't flinch. She calmly adjusted her papers, glanced at Jordan, and asked him to repeat the statute he had just misquoted. His words faltered. The silence grew heavy as he tried to recover, flipping through his notes. That's when Crockett seized the moment. She explained, line by line, how the law actually worked, pointing out the exact sections Jordan had twisted. The audience gasped. The legal trap he thought he had set crumbled in seconds, leaving him exposed. Jordan tried to interrupt, but Crockett's voice cut through louder, steadier, and sharper. She reminded everyone watching that law isn't a game of sound bites. It requires precision, discipline, and truth. Every point he raised, she dismantled with undeniable evidence. By the time she finished, Jordan's face was flushed, his papers scattered, and the crowd buzzing. Commentators later called it a masterclass in legal knowledge, a moment that went viral within minutes. Crockett didn't just defend herself. She turned the tables and left Jordan humiliated on live television. The clips spread like wildfire, replayed across news networks and social media. For many, it became the defining example of what happens when arrogance meets preparation. Crockett walked away stronger, her reputation glowing, while Jordan's attempt at dominance became a lesson in public defeat. As the murmurs filled the chamber, Jordan tried to regain his footing. He leaned into the microphone, forcing a laugh, pretending he hadn't just been dismantled. He waved a stack of papers in the air, hoping the show of confidence might overshadow the cracks in his argument. But Crockett wasn't done. She calmly leaned forward, her tone measured, her words precise. She asked Jordan if he had actually read the case law he was citing, or if he had simply skimmed a headline. The question hit harder than any accusation. The cameras zoomed in on Jordan's face as he stumbled. He mumbled something about interpretation, but Crockett didn't let it slide. She pulled out the full citation, reading directly from the ruling. Every word proved her right. Every line made it clear Jordan had misled the public. The silence that followed was deafening. Even his own allies shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The moment wasn't just a clash, it was a public unmasking. Then Crockett delivered the final blow. Asterisk. If you're going to lecture the American people on the law, Congressman, at least take the time to understand it. Asterisk. The crowd erupted. Some with applause, some with disbelief, but all with the recognition that Jordan had been caught red-handed. Jordan tried to interrupt again, his voice raised, but the damage was done. The image of him fumbling against Crockett's calm, surgical precision was already burned into the minds of everyone watching. The humiliation was no longer just about a legal mistake. It had become a complete collapse of his credibility in real time. Jordan's frustration was now impossible to hide. He raised his voice, leaning over his desk, trying to talk past Crockett. The chamber echoed with his attempts to reclaim authority, but every interruption only made him look more desperate. Crockett didn't raise her tone. She didn't need to. Instead, she calmly asked the chair to allow her to finish without being shouted over. The room fell quiet again, all eyes fixed on the sharp contrast, Jordan flailing, Crockett steady. She then pivoted, exposing not only his errors but also the larger consequence of them. "This isn't about me embarrassing you, Congressman," she said firmly. Asterisk. It's about the danger of misrepresenting the law to the American people. Asterisk. The words struck deep. What was supposed to be Jordan's show of strength now turned into a warning about recklessness. The viewers at home didn't just see a clash of personalities. They saw a choice between chaos and clarity. Jordan tried one last tactic, accusing Crockett of twisting his words. But she had receipts. She calmly replayed his earlier statement, word for word, reminding everyone that the cameras didn't lie. The moment he accused her of misrepresentation, the truth replayed right in front of him. The chamber reacted with whispers and raised eyebrows. Crockett sat back, her point made. Jordan, visibly rattled, flipped his papers again but found nothing to save him. The humiliation was no longer just about a legal mistake. It had become a complete collapse of his credibility in real time. By now, Jordan's hands shook slightly as he shuffled through his papers. The confidence that once carried his voice had drained, leaving behind only frustration. He leaned into the microphone, his words sharper now, but lacking the precision needed to cut through Crockett's calm delivery. Crockett, unbothered, adjusted her glasses and leaned forward once again. She didn't rush. Every pause she took made Jordan's outbursts look weaker. Then, with a steady tone, she asked, Congressman, do you even understand the legal foundation of the argument you're trying to make? The room froze. It was no longer just about fact-checking. Crockett was questioning his very competence. Jordan stammered, throwing out a half-formed rebuttal. But Crockett was prepared. She laid out 3 clear points of law, citing specific rulings, each one contradicting him directly. Each fact landed like a hammer, breaking apart what little defense he had left. The audience leaned in captivated. Commentators later said it wasn't just a debate, it was a dismantling. Jordan's arguments weren't simply refuted, they were exposed as hollow. Then Crockett delivered the line that sealed the moment. This isn't about politics, Congressman. This is about truth. And the truth does not bend just because you shout louder. The chamber erupted, some in applause, some in stunned silence. Jordan's face turned red as the weight of the moment sank in. Cameras captured it all, broadcasting his humiliation across the nation. For viewers at home, the outcome was undeniable. Jasmine Crockett had not just defended herself, she had outclassed him completely. Jordan refused to give up. His voice rose louder than ever as he tried to frame Crockett's calm dismantling as theatrics. He wagged his finger toward her, insisting that she was twisting the narrative. The chamber grew restless, some rolling their eyes, others waiting for Crockett's reply. She didn't flinch. Instead, Crockett leaned back in her chair and smiled faintly, as if she already knew what was coming. If defending the truth is theatrics, she said coolly, then perhaps you've mistaken this chamber for a stage instead of a court of law. The blow landed harder than expected. Laughter broke out among some in the audience, while others shook their heads at Jordan's unraveling performance. Jordan slammed his hand on the desk, demanding that the record reflect his point of view. But it was too late. The record already showed everything, every stumble, every misstep, every contradiction. Crockett seized the chance. She reminded him and the entire room that the hearing was live. Congressman, the people aren't fooled. They've seen you twist the law, and they've seen it corrected. In real time. The cameras captured Jordan's expression as he realized the scale of the disaster. This wasn't just a bad exchange. It was a viral moment in the making. Within minutes, clips began circulating online. On social media, hashtags tied to the confrontation started climbing the trends. Commentators framed it as a legal masterclass and a complete meltdown. What was meant to be Jordan's moment of control had turned into Crockett's defining victory. The moment the hearing ended, reporters rushed into the hallway, their cameras and microphones pointed like arrows. Jordan tried to speed past them, brushing off questions with short, clipped replies. But the damage was done. The clip was already exploding across every platform. News outlets replayed Crockett's calm dismantling side by side with Jordan's flustered responses. Headlines read like punches. Jordan exposed Liv. Crockett delivers legal smackdown. And asterisk, a lesson in preparation. Asterisk. On social media, the scene was everywhere. One short clip of Crockett's line. Asterisk, the truth does not bend just because you shout louder. Asterisk, was shared millions of times within hours. Memes popped up almost instantly, some showing Jordan drowning in papers while Crockett calmly held a single book of law. Inside the Capitol, whispers spread. Even some of Jordan's usual allies avoided defending his performance, choosing silence over risking association with the embarrassment. Meanwhile, Crockett's colleagues praised her composure, calling it one of the sharpest takedowns they had seen in years. That night, television commentators replayed the confrontation on loop. Analysts called it a turning point, not just in the hearing but in how Jordan's credibility would be judged moving forward. And as Crockett returned to her office, she carried herself with quiet confidence. She didn't need to brag. The footage spoke for itself. What was meant to silence her had instead amplified her voice across the nation. By the next morning, Jordan's team scrambled to control the fallout. They booked him on several talk shows, hoping he could reframe the confrontation as political theater. Sitting stiffly under the studio lights, Jordan repeated the same line. Asterisk, it was all a setup. Crockett twisted my words. Asterisk. But the hosts weren't buying it. They replayed the footage in front of him, frame by frame, showing his misquotes, his stumbles, and Crockett's direct citations. Each time, Jordan tried to wave it off, but the contrast between his excuses and the raw video only made things worse. On social media, his attempted spin collapsed almost instantly. The same clips he called taken out of context were spreading with captions mocking him for claiming the camera had lied. Comment sections filled with viewers asking the same question. Asterisk, did he forget we all saw it live? Asterisk. Meanwhile, Crockett stayed silent. She didn't need to add fuel. Her silence made Jordan's flailing attempts look even more desperate. The calm she had shown in the chamber became her greatest weapon outside it. Behind closed doors, whispers grew louder. Some of Jordan's colleagues reportedly warned him that the meltdown had cost credibility not just with opponents, but with his own side. The humiliation wasn't just personal anymore. It was political. And the more Jordan tried to fight the narrative, the deeper he sank into it. For nearly 2 days, Jasmine Crockett had stayed quiet. Reporters crowded outside her office, begging for a statement, but she gave them nothing. That silence only made the anticipation grow. When she finally walked up to the podium, the room was packed shoulder to shoulder. She didn't speak with anger or gloating. Instead, her tone was steady, professional, almost surgical. This hearing wasn't about me or Congressman Jordan, she began. Asterisk, it was about the law, about truth, and about the responsibility we have to get it right. Asterisk. Flashes from cameras filled the room as she continued. She reminded everyone that her role wasn't to embarrass anyone. It was to protect the integrity of the legal process. Asterisk. If correcting a misstatement of the law is considered humiliation, then perhaps the problem isn't with me. Asterisk. The line landed perfectly. It wasn't flashy, but it carried weight. Commentators would later describe it as measured fire, the kind of response that turned a viral moment into a legacy moment. Within hours, her words were trending online. Clips of her speech spread across social media, paired with side-by-side footage of Jordan's outbursts. The contrast was undeniable. One was controlled, precise, and principled, the other chaotic and crumbling. Jordan's attempt to spin the story as political theater collapsed completely. Crockett's calm statement reframed the narrative. This wasn't a fight she won. It was a truth he lost. And in the quiet aftermath of her remarks, her influence only grew stronger. Behind closed doors, the fallout was brutal. Jordan's allies, once quick to defend him, now kept their distance. Some avoided reporters altogether, while others muttered vague lines about wanting to move forward. A leaked conversation revealed the truth. Party leaders were furious. They accused Jordan of handing Crockett a golden moment on national television, one that had weakened their credibility. His insistence on attacking her had backfired, turning what should have been a routine hearing into a viral disaster. Jordan tried to reassure them, claiming he could rebuild the narrative. But no one believed it. The footage was everywhere. and every attempt he made to explain only amplified Crockett's calm dismantling of his arguments. Meanwhile, younger members of his own party whispered that Crockett had done what they had always feared, shown how easily Jordan's aggressive style could collapse under real scrutiny. For years, he thrived on dominating conversations with volume and speed. Now, that very tactic had been exposed as hollow. Crockett, for her part, stayed focused on her work. She didn't chase the headlines. She let them come to her. And they did. Editorial boards praised her discipline, legal scholars applauded her clarity, and even some conservative commentators grudgingly admitted she had been unshakable. Jordan sat isolated, watching the momentum slip further from his control. The humiliation wasn't fading. It was growing, spreading, becoming a symbol of arrogance undone by preparation. And for the first time in years, his power inside the chamber no longer felt untouchable. As the clip continued to spread, Jasmine Crockett's name was everywhere. Morning shows invited her to speak, headlines praised her precision, and late-night hosts replayed the moment with admiration. She accepted only a handful of interviews, each one carefully chosen, where she reinforced the same message. Asterisk, this isn't about me winning. It's about protecting the truth. Asterisk, the restraint worked. Viewers admired her discipline as much as her skill. Polling data began to show a noticeable uptick in her recognition nationwide. People who had never followed congressional hearings now knew her name, calling her the congresswoman who stood her ground. At a town hall in her district, the response was overwhelming. Supporters packed the venue, some carrying signs with her now famous line, Asterisk, the truth does not bend just because you shout louder. Asterisk, she was no longer just a sharp voice in hearings. She had become a symbol of composure under fire. Meanwhile, journalists compared her handling of the moment to historic political takedowns, where calm precision toppled bluster. Editorials framed her as a rising star with potential far beyond the chamber. And through it all, Crockett remained steady. She didn't brag. She didn't attack. She simply reminded the public why the truth mattered. That quiet consistency made her stand out even more in an era of noise. As her influence grew, Jordan's collapse looked sharper in contrast. What had been his loudest moment became her strongest stage. Jordan couldn't escape it. Everywhere he went, reporters shouted the same question. Asterisk, do you regret going after Jasmine Crockett? Asterisk, his forced smile never held for long, and each time he brushed off the question, the footage of his red-faced meltdown replayed in the background. In private meetings, his frustration boiled over. He lashed out at aides, demanding new talking points, fresh angles, anything to claw back control of the narrative. But no matter how his team spun it, the core truth remained. Crockett hadn't just won the exchange. She had revealed the weakness in his style. The pressure mounted from within his own ranks. Donors began expressing concern, questioning whether Jordan's constant theatrics were becoming a liability. Some even hinted that continued support might hinge on his ability to recover, though no one believed recovery was possible. Late-night comedians mocked him relentlessly, turning his outbursts into sketches that went viral just as fast as the original clip. For the first time, Jordan wasn't feared, he was laughed at. In response, he tried doubling down, launching new attacks in smaller hearings. But the strategy backfired. Each attempt drew comparisons to his humiliation at Crockett's hands. Instead of moving past it, he only reminded the public of it. The more he struggled, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a bad moment. It was the start of a permanent crack in his image. While Jordan scrambled to contain the damage, Jasmine Crockett's profile soared. Invitations poured in from universities, legal forums, and national organizations asking her to speak about law, leadership, and integrity. She accepted only a few, but each appearance made headlines. One evening, she sat down for a primetime interview. The host leaned forward and asked the question everyone wanted to know. Asterisk, did you set out to humiliate Jim Jordan? Asterisk, Crockett smiled slightly before answering. Asterisk, no. I set out to uphold the truth. What happened after that is not mine to control. Asterisk. The audience applauded, and clips of her response spread across platforms, cementing her image as calm and principled. Commentators praised her ability to rise above the noise without losing sharpness. Back in her district, the ripple effect was even stronger. Constituents rallied around her, seeing her not just as their representative, but as a voice that carried weight on the national stage. Her office phone rang nonstop with messages of support, and volunteers signed up in record numbers. Behind the scenes, whispers began circulating. Crockett could be headed for bigger roles in the future. Some speculated about leadership positions, others about higher office. Her moment with Jordan had done more than silence a critic. It had catapulted her into a new political tier. Meanwhile, Jordan's name continued to sink in the headlines, always tied to words like humiliated, flustered, or undone. The contrast was impossible to miss. Crockett didn't need to chase the spotlight. It was already following her. The whispers inside the Capitol turned into open frustration. Party leaders began excluding Jordan from key strategy meetings, worried his presence would attract unwanted attention. Where he once commanded influence with his fiery style, now his colleagues saw only risk. Some even joked, quietly behind closed doors, that Crockett had done what years of opposition couldn't. She had weakened Jordan from the inside. His usual allies no longer rushed to defend him on television. Instead, they sidestepped questions, offering vague statements like asterisk, were focused on moving forward. Asterisk. The shift was obvious. Reporters noticed he was no longer the go-to spokesman for high-profile hearings. Other members stepped into the spotlight while Jordan sat on the sidelines, his relevance slipping. He tried to fight back, cornering colleagues in hallways, reminding them of past victories, insisting the public would forget. But they didn't. Every new headline about Crockett's rise carried his name in the background, tied to failure. Behind the scenes, donors sent signals too. Fundraising. Numbers dipped, and longtime supporters quietly diverted resources elsewhere. Jordan's brand, once built on strength and confrontation, had become synonymous with defeat. For the first time in his career, he felt the sting of political isolation. Not from his opponents, but from his own side. And all because Jasmine Crockett had refused to be intimidated, turning his loudest attack into his deepest wound. As Jordan slipped deeper into isolation, Jasmine Crockett's momentum only grew. Prominent figures across the political spectrum